our mind is only designed to know two things. It's designed to know how things are happening, and it's designed to know how things have happened. It has no idea how things are going to happen even 5 seconds from now. So the name of the game, rather than trying to figure out what's going to happen, is to learn how to tune into where things are figured out for you, which is the rhythm of the universe, the intelligence of life. So the idea is, if you know that there's this pocket of life that you can align with, called synchronicity, where magical things just happen for you, the question becomes, okay, well, how do I stay in that rhythm? Like, how do I live in that flow of synchronicity so that I don't need to force, I don't need to push, I don't need to struggle. I really can just play and passion my way towards success and prosperity and family and all those things. And the way to that is to recognize that in any given moment, there's a number of things you could choose to focus on. If you simply choose to focus on the thing that has the highest spark to it, the most attractiveness, the most joy, the lightest feeling, that is like listening to the butterfly to your caterpillar. And are we refreshed?
I feel refreshed. Do you feel refreshed?
I do feel refreshed.
Oh my gosh.
A little caffeine high, but refreshed.
Yeah. David Lyon, welcome back.
Thank you.
I'm glad we're doing this in person.
I know.
I actually don't even remember what we talked about the first time you came on the show, but probably like your story.
Yeah. The first time I don't even know. I know we had one where we talked about where wealth meets ease.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were talking about the art of true transformation, I think, in the first one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where are we going this time?
I don't know. We'll find out. Do you have any messages you want to share after a little grounding?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel like so much has been happening for you.
Yeah.
And I kind of intentionally have not checked in much because I wanted live check-in on the show.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about, I mean, you just moved back to LA recently. Tell me about what's been going on the last 6 months to a year.
Oh my Lord.
What brought you back here? Give me a themes overview. What have you been learning? What's been going on?
The big thing of what brought me back here is a TV show opportunity. So last year, about a year and a half ago, I threw a house party where I also wanted to perform because I hadn't performed my art of Lionism in a very long time. And so I put together a very particular house party where I wanted to invite all my celebrity friends and my spiritual friends. I'm like, y'all need each other. Y'all want to be some more artists. You guys want to be more spiritual. Let's blend them together. And the theme was share your shine. And so, of course, I wanted to lead the charge. And I did a Lionism performance, a mixture of magic, hypnosis, and mind reading. And one of my friends there, who I was pretty much just getting to know after she saw me perform, she's like, you need your own TV show. And I was like, yeah, I do. But I didn't know how serious she meant it, because literally within the span of a week, she was like, all right, I set up a meeting for you with my TV manager. We put together Tyler the Medium and this. I'm like, oh, you're for real? And she's like, oh yeah. She's like, no, I don't fuck around. I'm like, clearly.
Yeah.
So within a week, 2 weeks, all of a sudden I had a full team around me. And we did the meetings and I impressed the people and all that stuff. And so now we have a show that's in creation that, we're still at the beginning stages of. We got to pitch it around, but we just completed the teaser or the sizzle reel. And I can't say too much about it, but I could just say it's very exciting because I've always wanted to capture the full spectrum of me, like not just me as a performer or as a healer, but like just me being me and letting it be complemented by my talents and gifts. So it's very reality TV blended with, my flavors of magic.
I'm very excited. I want to touch on what you just said. Why do you feel like that's so important for you when you're saying like it's me being me, complemented by my gifts? Like, go into that a little bit more.
So I've had TV opportunities in the past, and I was so excited for it, because people wanted to brand me as a hypnotist and do that kind of thing. And as much as I was excited for it, I kept feeling like I was going to get pigeonholed into being a performer. And I really didn't want that. I didn't ever want to feel like, okay, I have to do this over and over and over again, because I evolve so much, and my passions evolve. Sometimes I feel like doing hypnosis. Sometimes I feel like doing magic. Sometimes it's more wisdom based. And so what I'd learned from my past experience that I ended up saying no to was, on one level, it was not wanting to be controlled and like seeing that they were trying to fit me into their vision. But on another level, energetically, I'm like, well, I was leading with a lot of let me blow your mind. And so of course that's how they're going to want to sell me. Where this time around, it was very clear for me that whatever I manifest, I want it to come from a relaxed frequency. And that was huge for me. So and it was an edge, because even when the first meeting got set up and my friend Charlie, she was like, "Okay, I'm going to hook you up with my TV manager. You'll go meet her. You'll blow her mind." I remember that day I was exhausted for whatever reason. And so I made the clear decision that, you know what, I'm not going to show up there and feel like I have to perform. If this opportunity is going to come to me, it's going to continue to come to me from my relaxed frequency. So it continues to manifest that way. And so I very intentionally showed up to her house, and I arrived first. So no one else was there. It was just me and her. And I had no intention of performing. I had no intention of doing anything. I was like, I'm just going to chill with you. We're going to have a good time. And if something unfolds organically, great. And if not, it doesn't. And it ended up leading to just the most amazing time where we got to kick it and connect as people. And then because of something she said, it led to a healing session. Mm-hmm. And then because of something else that kind of popped up, I ended up levitating some cards for her. And so it all unfolded organically. And she was absolutely blown away. But for me, the win was, okay, I got to be me. And this is what we're manifesting from. And I don't feel the pressure in my body of, okay, now I have to show up and perform. I really do just get to be get to be relaxed.
I think that's so expansive for people on so many levels. One being, I do know that a lot of people feel like to get to a certain level, they're going to have to get pigeonholed or branded in a certain way. And I think especially like in the space we're in, people really don't want to get put in a box. And so people will feel like, am I going to have to compromise what I want to get there? And so you're showing a way you don't have to. I want to get into the relaxed frequency piece. Yeah. But before I go there, I'm just curious, do you feel like, this is a genuine question, like, because maybe not, but do you ever feel like in other contexts, people are more interested in you for your gifts than just who you are? Like, have you ever felt like that before? Or do you ever feel like that gets lost, like even in a personal context?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that stopped a long time ago when I was younger, probably in my early 20s, because I used to lead with my talents, but I didn't even know how to value myself. I thought like if I wasn't a magician, then I'm nothing. Mm-hmm. So people only knew what I was able to show. Where these days that doesn't happen at all. Like I feel like people, the reflections I get is just like they love the magicalness of me as a being and are pleasantly surprised when they could experience the more of it. But I never feel that like that's the main connection point. Mm-hmm. Like which I love to just be like, I'm the magic and I could show you magical things.
Mm-hmm. How did you get out of that? I'm asking because this has actually been a conversation that's come up with different people I know where they're realizing, oh, I'm just realizing, like, duh moment, I have this kind of belief that people won't love me if I'm not performing for them. And for a lot of these people, it's more like giving a lot of advice or kind of like more coaching or that. Yeah. And that conversation has been very present. So that's why I'm asking.
For me, from what I could remember, the intention became, I'm just going to blow you away with who I am. And it's a very clear intention. Like and I love to do it. Like when I meet new people, I could feel what's moving through me, like the way I could make people laugh, or I could like, get people to like, so, but there's a clear intention of like, I want to blow you away with who I am first. And once that's established, then I'm happy to explore other domains and be like, hey, by the way, like, you want to see something?
Yeah.
And then it becomes the icing on the cake instead of the whole cake.
I mean, I've never even seen a lot of your
really
stuff. I mean, I've never seen you actually in person, like do hypnosis. I've never been to one of your shows or anything.
Well, maybe you do got to come up
yeah,
tomorrow.
I mean, yeah, I was like, I mean, it's crazy to me.
Yeah.
You know, like now that you're saying it, I'm like, I've actually never really seen any of it.
That's true. That's
so,
wild.
I mean, I've had like session, you know, we worked together in different ways, so, but I've seen that, but I haven't seen like the magic. I've never seen you actually do magic.
Oh, we're definitely gonna have to change that.
Yeah, I'm desperate for it. I was like, we need to do something.
For sure. Yeah,
we'll plan something.
Cool.
So, but no, I mean, I love that. I think for some people, they feel like their gifts, like that is who they are. Yeah. So when you say, you know, I'm going to blow you away with who I am, it's like, well, isn't this part of who I am? How do I separate that?
Right. Yeah. And it can be tricky at first, especially if you're still working through certain insecurities and self-worth issues and just not knowing yourself. Because I remember for me in the beginning, where it came from is I remember I was at a club and I used to pick up chicks with magic. And one time I got called out for it. I was at a club and this girl just walked in the club and I pulled out my deck of cards and I was just like, I'm like, oh, take one. She's like, oh, is this how you get girls? And when she said that, I was like, yeah, it is. In my head, I'm like, that's totally how I do it.
Yeah.
And so it was a simple comment, but it made me reflect and be like, wow, I'm like, people don't know me, but I'm the one creating that experience. And so just having that experience made me intentionally be like, I will not pull out my deck of cards or anything until I feel there's been a sort of rapport established first, without me needing to show off some sort of talent. So I don't know if I had a particular practice, but it was just a very clear intention of, well, one, I had to become clear on like who I am. You know, I'm like, because like I said, I felt like if I didn't have magic, then I'm worth nothing, because people love me for my magic. That's why I get paid. That's why people want me at their parties. So there was a self-discovery of sorts of, well, what makes me me? Like, and then learning the value of my vulnerability and my silliness and my little quirks when I talk and stuff like that. All kinds of things that you would naturally overlook unless you're looking for it, unless you're kind of paying attention to what people are responding to, you know. And I think that's what happened for me, is I started to pay more attention to the subtle feedback and reflections people would give me. Like, even if it's just like, oh, you asked really good questions, I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like, oh, like, you know, you're so funny, you know. But before, it's almost like when I didn't know my value, I would hear a compliment but not take it in. And I remember feeling very uncomfortable with compliments at one point. I would literally like do this, like, okay, thank you. Like my head would do this whole thing, and my friend made fun of me. He's like, bro, stop doing the head thing. he's like, you look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
You know? And he's like, just receive.
It's a good friend.
Very good friend. Shout out to Harun. And yeah, and so I learned to really take in a compliment, and now I love it, you know, but it also helped me see through the eyes of another. And so I guess that was my unfolding process towards it. Yeah. I
love that. It's interesting. I resonate with what you're saying, and people ask me a lot about self-worth, and I know that this is it's a big topic for people. I don't know if people ask you about that a lot.
From time to time, yeah.
And it's a tough one for me, because my answer is really similar to you when I think about just my own journey. Like, there was certainly a period I didn't know my own worth or value. And so I was like, okay, let me figure it out. So I started to get to know myself and get to know other parts of myself and realize how awesome I am and listen to that feedback. And that's how I developed it. Yeah. And I'll tell people that. And it's like, oh, I can't do that, or like, I don't get it, or there's still like this block. Yeah. Like, have you ever noticed that, or do you see that too with people?
Yeah, I do from time to time, where I feel like it's really that fear of their own self-judgment that's coming up in those moments when they know they could be more of themselves. You know, it's for example, oftentimes I'll post something on my social media that is different than how you might imagine me, you know, as a spiritual teacher or whatnot. Like, I posted a video of me doing a tortilla slap challenge, me and the boys, and we're just like smacking each other in the face. I thought it was hilarious. Yeah. But the amount of messages I got from people were like, that freed me. And I was like, really? and they're like, well, it's like
doing the Lord's work with your tortilla slaps.
Yeah, like seriously, I'm like, all right,
yeah,
cool, God. And like one of the messages I got was like, well, I just because I'm a chiropractor and because I'm this image, I feel like all my posts need to fall in line with this image. And when I saw your video, I'm like, there's David Lyon, who, spiritual teacher or whatever, he's like slapping people in the face. But it gave him permission to show more of his fun side and to just be more of who he already is, but had self-judgment towards. So that's where I notice like people will bump up against this self-judgment with who they are and who they are with their boys or with their girls, and who they are in privacy. But it's like those are the things that people want to see. That's like why we like reality TV. It's 100%. Like we want to see the quirks.
Yeah.
Like what makes you you.
Yeah. Well, it's like business wise, I always tell people, and it's hard for people to really grasp this. I'm like, people are going to want to work with you for all of the things that you don't think are connected to your business. Yes. So when I used to like teach primarily business, and I would go through content, and I had this whole section on all the content to put out that has nothing to do with whatever you're teaching.
Yeah.
And people were like, I don't want to share. I'm like, where are you hanging out on the weekends? Who are your friends? Like, what do you like to do? Like, what book are you reading? What drink are you drinking in the morning? All these random things. And people were like not connecting how important that is. And I'm like, just trust me.
Yeah.
And it works every single time because people are trying to connect with your frequency or like who you are as a person. That's very holistic. And it's like, why would I, if I'm picking between 5 chiropractors, I'm going to pick the one who I think is cool.
100%. Exactly. It makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you could have the certifications and whatnot, but do I vibe with you?
Yeah.
And this is where I'll often reflect to people. I'm like, do you have a favorite celebrity? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I love Jennifer Lopez. I'm like, cool. I'm like, what do you like about her? And most of the time they're not talking about her music. They're like, it's like, yes, her music. Oh, I just love her interviews. She's so strong. She's so this. I like the bloopers. I'm like, so you like her.
Yeah.
You like her quirks, and that makes you like the movies so much more. So usually what you're resonating with in someone that you admire, be it a celebrity or otherwise, is because you're wanting to call forth that element of yourself a little bit more too. So that's something that I pay attention to because I love watching celebrity interviews. Like, I've probably seen like every Drake interview that there is.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And Michael Jackson.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I think the other piece of it was self-worth, like as you're talking, it's just, I think people are looking for something outside of themselves. Like, if I do this, or if this person says this will fix it for me. And you have this moment, like the way you answered this or the way I answer it, very similar, where it was like, we both were very okay with the idea of this is an internal thing. I'm going to give this to myself.
Yeah.
So easy. Yeah. I get to know myself. And for other people, I think there's a resistance to admitting or accepting this is just you giving it to yourself.
Yeah. And also I noticed a lot of people have a resistance to their own joy, which is something I've been observing. It's like I've seen it, but not taken note of it.
Why do you think that is?
There's a certain value placed on the composure of seriousness and being well disciplined and, professional that dampens their own self-joy. And I've heard this come up a few times where I was, I see it a lot in men especially, but not just men, but like where people will feel like, I asked someone to leave me a testimonial for something recently, and the testimonial he gave back was amazing, but there was like no emotion in his face. And it's a thing that comes up a lot with men, but not just men, where it's just like, it's this belief that this is what a man is, or like seriousness is valued. And so it dampens, the animation of the face, but it's like, that's why we like Disney movies. We like to see all of it, So I think it's just because people have unconsciously valued certain composures, certain images that then wash out the experience of their own essence. Because as soon as we tickle someone's joy, you find your self-worth, right? When you feel connected to the joy inside you, just without needing something to stimulate it, so it's not just because you're going to a park or watching a certain movie, but you just feel joyful, then you're going to feel and know your worth, because it's one of the easiest and quickest ways to connect with source inside your heart. So it's interesting to see that, though. Like even with someone recently, I gave a session to this woman. She didn't know how to access joy because she had an apathy towards it. She had developed, and the tricky thing was with apathy is usually you don't know it's there, because by definition it's numbness to your numbness. So I did some work with her to to clear that up and move the energy, and next thing you know, like after the session, like her face changed, and she's giggling and laughing, and she can't say anything seriously, and she's like, I haven't experienced joy in so long. And it started to make me realize, I'm like, okay, this is a thing for people. A lot of people think that joy is a byproduct of something, but it doesn't need to be so. Like it's your natural state. So this is just like one of the entry points to your own sense of self-worth.
Mm-hmm. Okay, this is important. Yes. I love that you brought that up, like, because I want to unpack this. Yeah. Because I feel this is very present for a lot of people. I know so many people that are like, I don't know how to have fun, or it's exactly what you said. They think that their joy is going to be a byproduct of something else, and they keep doing these things and they're not feeling that way. And I think a lot of adults are struggling with this and realizing, this is connected to, how do I access my divine child within, all of that, right? But people are feeling really disconnected and stuck. So let's start with, we value seriousness, because it's professional? Like, can we unpack that?
I don't know why people value seriousness, because that was never me. Mm-hmm. But I know it's associated with discipline, and there's a belief that, you have to be serious to be successful, mm-hmm. which for me is ludicrous.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I'm like, even just as an energy, like seriousness is rigid. Yeah. Which means you'll have less access to your creativity and your potential. And I think people just don't make that connection. So yeah, I think the main thing with seriousness is the perception that it's linked to discipline and getting things done and productivity. And so because there's that subconscious link, joyfulness feels irresponsible. Joyfulness feels like, oh, well, then I'll just like fuck around and do whatever I want all day, not realizing, no, joy will connect you to your power. It'll connect you to your inspiration. It'll connect you to your creativity, to your intuition. You'll joyfully want to move towards things without needing to push yourself. This is where I always say more essence, less effort. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just that people aren't taking a second to look at it and be like, does this actually make sense, what I'm believing? And that's, yeah.
Yeah. Lots of things set up to kind of make us lose our authenticity, I think.
Yeah, totally.
If someone's listening and they resonate with this, you mentioned that you could, worked with this client on this, but is there anything people could just do at home, or listeners, if they're feeling like, how do I connect in with this feeling of joy? Like they're recognizing, wow, I've been stuck in this serious energy.
Well, one, it gets to be very simple, I think is important to say, because it's not anything that people need to work for. So even if you're listening in this moment and you're like, yeah, show me this joy thing. Well, for one, really take in what I'm saying as far as it gets to be easy, it gets to be simple, and to take a moment to just soften up inside yourself. Because chances are, if you're one of those people, as you're listening to this, you're unconsciously holding a lot of tension in your body, right? Unconsciously just stiff in certain places. So just take a moment to soften wherever you might be holding something. And maybe you'll feel some more lightness arise, some more tickles in your heart, maybe, perhaps. And then as you soften, it becomes as simple as asking yourself, well, what would make you happy in this moment? What sounds like fun? What would spark your inner child? What does the little 5-year-old you really want to do in this moment that you've been putting off till later because you've been believing that only once I accomplish this will I give myself that? And it'll become obvious, whether that's letting yourself watch a funny show on Netflix or whatever the thing is. It's not hidden. It's just something that you need to choose to give permission to. And it'll be normal as you feel it to be like, okay, well, yeah, I really do want to watch an episode of Friends or whatever it is, but I have this stuff to do. The thing that's not being seen there is, well, for one, okay, cool, you have stuff to do. And there's a way to do that stuff where you don't need to push yourself, but you could be pulled into it. And when you choose to energize and nourish your joy, you'll find like, okay, I feel so much lighter. Now I feel better. Oh, you know what? Because it's, and I always give this analogy, is like, so if you're vibrating over here because you're feeling stiff and rigid, but inspiration and clarity lives over here. By acting on your joy and making yourself laugh and making yourself giggle and going into happiness, you get into the vibrational vicinity of where clarity and inspiration and revelations exist, so that all of a sudden you could just be like, oh, that's how I could do the thing that I've been really wanting to do. So joyfulness, it literally shifts the chemistry of your body to think better, to behave better, to act better. And that's why I always talk about the importance of joyful prosperity and joyful productivity, as opposed to, I need to do this very seriously. So yeah.
I think a lot of people, when you ask that question, soften and just tune into, what do I just want to do? Yeah. I think a lot of people are like, I'm just so tired.
Yes.
Like, I think before they can even get to like, what would be fun for me?
Yes.
Their first feeling is like, I just want a nap.
Yes.
Like, I can't even get to what would make me giggle. I just need to sleep.
Yes.
So, I mean, what is, just go into that? Like, what do you have to say about that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, because it's true. It's, for a lot of people, jumping into joy might seem like a very high vibrational leap, because they're like, I just want relief. I want rest. And so absolutely serve that. Like, it's like if you have a cell phone battery that's on 10%, you're only going to get so far.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's the same thing with our bodies. If you're constantly running on a 10% battery, you're only going to access certain things and have a certain amount of power to do you. So if you are feeling exhausted, it is so important to not only give yourself the rest, but there's a difference between, okay, I'm going to rest so that I can go back and do this stuff. That's not true rest. Yeah. That's a patch. That's like taking the Tylenol. True rest is, I'm going to rest because rest feels good. I'm doing rest for rest's sake. And if it feels scary to do that, that's how you know it's an evolution point for you. Otherwise, it wouldn't feel scary to rest, So I always recommend people to check in with their heart space, because anytime you're caught up in the mind and all these things you think you have to do, the noise of the mind is created by the unacknowledgement of the heart. But our mind is designed to be an empty space for our heart's visions and our heart's wisdom. So I always recommend to people is like, take a moment and drop into the heart space, but like really drop in, because it's easy to be aware of what's going on in the heart. It's like, I feel sad, but how come you don't sound sad in your voice when you're saying that? Right? So you could be aware of what's going on in the heart, but to actually drop in to the discomforts you might feel there. And as you drop in, just being like, okay, what am I needing to experience right now? What am I needing to feel more of? And it might be just rest, relaxation, laughter, peace. But whatever it is you acknowledge, the moment you acknowledge it, you'll also notice that your mind is silent, because you're tuning into your core vibration, the core of your being. And in the acknowledgement, you're also giving it to yourself, because the second you're like, oh, I need rest, you're going to feel a little bit of rest start to pulse through you. And it's up to you if you choose to continue to serve that, which I highly recommend. But in so doing, that is you recharging your field, your battery, so that then you have the power and the capacity to wake up refreshed, and all of a sudden, oh, I have this inspiration to do this thing. Oh, that feels fun. But you didn't have the energy for it before, so it would not have been possible for you. So yeah, that's generally what I recommend to people. And I could kind of, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but this ties into understanding, because for a lot of people, they have a hard time seeing the logic in letting themselves play and letting themselves rest and then be joyful and then have fun, because there's the belief that if they do that, they'll be irresponsible, they won't be productive, which couldn't be further from the truth. And so, yeah, so I don't know how deep in that.
I mean, you're welcome to keep going. This is helpful for people.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, like, I mean, if they're having trouble with the logic, then do you have more to say on that? Or like going back to what you were saying before, kind of?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So step one is make sure your heart is good. You know, if you can access joy and excitement, step one, cater to your heart, whatever that looks like, whether it's rest, whether you need to empty your heart because you've been holding a lot in and you need to feel heard and you need to feel felt. Whatever that thing is, make sure the heart is taken care of. And then from there, you'll have access to your intuition and your inspiration and your joy and your excitement, which for me is like the fork and knife on the dinner plate of life. And so once you have access to things like your joy, or we could even just call it a lighter feeling. So for some people it might be like, but is this joy or is this excitement? Just move in the direction of a lighter feeling. And it's like pulling a thread. And what happens is, I always like to give the reflection of, you know, our mind is only designed to know two things. It's designed to know how things are happening, and it's designed to know how things have happened. It has no idea how things are going to happen even 5 seconds from now. You might receive a synchronistic call that gives you an opportunity. So the name of the game, rather than trying to figure out what's going to happen, is to learn how to tune into where things are figured out for you, which is the rhythm of the universe, the intelligence of life. So we know that there's this higher power, if we want to call it that is unfolding reality for us. And we know that we have these moments of synchronicity or coincidence that some of them are really amazing and other of them are like shit. You know, so we could think of them as like red light and green light synchronicity. You know, we like the green lights. Although red lights are good. Sometimes it redirects you. So the idea is, if you know that there's this pocket of life that you can align with called synchronicity, where magical things just happen for you, the question becomes, okay, well, how do I stay in that rhythm? Like, how do I live in that flow of synchronicity so that I don't need to force, I don't need to push, I don't need to struggle. I really can just play and passion my way towards success and prosperity and family and all those things. And the way to that is to recognize that, assuming you're well rested and you're in that space, in any given moment, there's a number of things you could choose to focus on. If you simply choose to focus on the thing that has the highest spark to it, the most attractiveness, the most joy, the lightest feeling, that is like listening to the butterfly to your caterpillar. Is the most simple way of saying it. You could call it your higher self, which it is, but it is the butterfly to your caterpillar. And the way that you know this to be true for your logical brain is if you look back in the past at any time in your life where you were afraid to, but you decided to act on a certain inspiration or take a certain leap of faith that you were called towards, even though it didn't make sense to your mind, you knew you had to do it. I guarantee you 100% of the time there was some sort of magical unfolding. It might not be what you expected to happen, but there was some sort of synchronicity that clicked in. And so we start to see that, oh, okay, when I act on inspiration, it leads towards more inspiring things. When I act on joy, it leads towards more joyful things. When I act on stress, it leads towards more stressful things. The feelings we act on is the reality that we're building towards. And so when we could see that this is the case even in the past 100% of the time, and even looking at the negative spectrum, how many times have people been in a situation when they're like, you know what, I'm just going to grind it out, I'm going to do this for the month, and then I'll have the financial prosperity, then I'll have the freedom to kick back. And then what happens a month later? When they act on the frustration and stress, unexpected frustration and stress synchronizes into the reality, and all of a sudden, I need another month. Oh, it didn't go the way you planned, right? And there's a simple math to that. If you really look closely, I like to look at it in colors, right? So if you imagine your most magical, fulfilled, wealthy self, what color is that for you if you were to give it a color?
Gold.
Beautiful. So if you wanted to at any point, you could tune into gold actions. You know, like, oh, what would be the gold path? Now, if you think of stress Misery and frustration, what color is that?
Red.
Red, right? And same thing, you can see those colors now in your subconscious or in your consciousness more visually. And the idea is, it doesn't matter what actions you're taking and how good the strategy is and how well your plan is. If you're acting from red, you will manifest red. If you're acting from the belief that life is not good enough, you'll manifest more of life is not good enough. Where on the flip side, if you're choosing to be the spider that weaves the web of gold, or whatever your color might be, even if the path looks irresponsible or looks like it's disconnected from the things you're meant to be doing, the feeling is letting you know that it is connected to it, because now it's physics. You know, what you put out is what you get back. So for all you know, you're like, yeah, but I was supposed to build this whole thing. Okay, but for all you know, if you act on your gold color, you're gonna go see the friends, and there's a new friend there that you didn't expect to meet who ends up becoming a business partner and takes a whole bunch of stuff off your plate next, and now you're creating everything through joy. Right? So it's just so important to become more vibrationally attuned in our reality, as opposed to so physically attuned, because this is why people create stress for themselves. You know, stress is the symptom of trying to use your mind in the way that it's not designed and trying to figure out how things are going to happen. It's literally the body's messenger that you're not doing something your soul's way. And while stress is normal, it's not natural. And so what I always invite people to do here is like, okay, you're very aware of your physical reality and what you think needs to happen. No, I'm pretty sure I need money for rent. Yes, you need money for rent. Correct. And you don't know how it's needing to happen. But what you do know is that, or what I hope you know, is that we live in a vibrational universe. And so if we choose to stop being so physically attuned and to instead be vibrationally attuned of what color am I acting from, then you have a very immediate and practical way of navigating yourself through life and synchronizing with the colors that you prefer as opposed to the ones you don't prefer. And it just becomes a very simple practice in that way.
I love that explanation.
Yeah.
And what I'll say is, because I don't know if you're like this, whenever I do things, I can like hear telepathically what people are like thinking or saying, right? Like in response to what you're sharing. And what I would say is to just acknowledge there can be really deep like conditioning. And a lot of people, when you're very used to being on that logical track and your mind is really, really loud, to just like acknowledge that it makes sense that it's really loud.
Yes.
And say, you know, obviously it's going to be loud. I've been using this most of my life and trusting this. And yeah, I know that maybe the things I've learned in the past on a logical level make me think I should do this or should do that. I'm aware that voice is loud, but I also have this one. Even though it's quieter, doesn't mean that it's incorrect. It's just that I haven't used that muscle as much.
Yes.
Because I think that's a big difference. I was just talking to some of the girls on my team about this, like with business, because we were talking about everything we know through very tangible like business lessons and what we know about algorithms and all that. And I was like, you know, we have to be able to, we get to be able to hold all of that and know all of that, but we also understand energy and frequency, and those can both exist together.
Yes.
And instead of feeling like, oh, they're conflicting, it's like, this one is what matters. Always. And that's not going to go away. And so I think just being able to hold all of that
100%
lets you move forward.
100%. And, you know, it will be harder if you're trying to be a lone ranger, right? Which a lot of us fall into, you know, and sometimes feel like they don't have the support systems or the soul family to kind of hash certain things out and find ways to lighten up, you know. So this is where, you know, the importance of mentorship and community and, you know, conscious friends and processing partners is so key to make this easy for you. Because, you know, I don't know that, I mean, maybe, but I don't know that I'd be able to do it as easily as I do if I didn't have the support system and community that I have around me.
I agree.
You know, environment makes a huge difference. You could have all the potential in the world inside of a seed, but if it's not in the right soil, it won't blossom. So I think there is something big to be said about environment and community, especially if this feels hard, you know, even hearing it right here, right now. And there was something else you said that I was going to touch on. Oh yeah, that I forget how you phrased it, but you're talking about like when the noise is really loud. When the noise is loud in the mind, more often than not, it's just because the heart doesn't feel safe. Mm. You know, it's like, no, I need to figure this out, and this is what's happening. It's like, you're not feeling safe, right? There's somewhere where you're not feeling safe, and you'll notice that the second that gets pinpointed, there's a exhale. There's a, oh yeah, it's true. And now in that brief moment, for however long, you're serving the heart, and the mind gets quiet. And so this is where I always go back to, if the mind is noisy, it's because there's something in the heart that's not being acknowledged 100% of the time.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if I ever told you about this. One of the most profound spiritual experiences I ever had, I was, I'll say like in session, not formally, with a friend. Yeah. And she was really just like struggling with figuring some things out. Well, I won't even say figuring things out, just struggling with business things, feeling very frustrated. And I went into Oracle mode, and I was like, there's this blue ball floating above you. She was like, what is it? And I was like, it's your joy. It's just floating. It's just floating around. And I had to kind of catch it. It was like floating, and I had to catch it. I grabbed it. I was like, okay, we got to put it back in. Right. So I put it back in, and I start at the top, and I bring it, and I'm watching it. And as it's melting in, her whole face is like literally like changing. Wow. And I'm watching her eyes light up, and like it's going down, and it's hitting her heart. And she just bursts into tears, like smiling, wow. like happy tears. Wow. She's like giggling and happy. And she literally looked like in a beautiful way, like a little girl, like just like melted. And she was like giggling and laughing. She's like, oh my God, like my joy is back. And she was even kind of like talking like more softer. And I was like, holy shit. And that was so profound for me, just to kind of witness and see, you know, how many people literally just cannot see what's so easy and effortless because our lens isn't fully clear, right? And the second that's all dropped back in, suddenly it's so obvious what I want to do.
Exactly.
And it's literally like popped out of her body.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about that as we're talking. I'm like, hers is blue.
Blue joy.
Yeah, blue joy.
Yeah, it makes me think of, you know, one of the practices that I often recommend to people is to take a sheet of paper, draw a line down the middle, and on one side, on the left side, write who I think I need to be, and on the right side, who I truly am. And this will reveal to you all your subconscious composures and learned behaviors that are dampening your joy and access to source energy within you. You know, because whoever you think you need to be is a certain radio station in your consciousness. And so that radio station isn't going to have access to the authenticity of your gifts and channel and creativity. And so being in the beautiful realm of duality that we are, the moment that you identify who you think you need to be, you'll immediately know who you truly are. By knowing left, you know right. You know, and it's just such a great exercise for further embodying your higher self. You know, so people might be like, well, I think I need to be disciplined. I need to be professional. I need to be tough. You know, and whatever those things are, then ask yourself, okay, you think you need to be disciplined, but who are you truly? You know, it's like, oh, well, I'm just kind of like fun loving. Yeah. Right? I'm blissiplined or whatever it is. And you'll feel it in your body. And so the moment that it no longer makes sense logically to the body, or just like, I guess that's the best word I have, like it no longer clicks in your body, you'll let go of that composure. You'll let go of a notch of yourself, of who you thought you needed to be, that you no longer need. And that is a very quick way to reorient yourself to your true frequency.
Have you gone through that yourself in the past? Like what were you trying to be that wasn't you?
I thought I needed to be macho. I thought I needed to be a certain kind of cool. I thought I needed to be blacker than the black that I am. I thought I needed to be I thought crying wasn't a good thing, you know, because I used to get made fun of by my brothers growing up. And so, you know, it was good to be guarded. I thought I needed to be controlling in certain ways. And I'm like remembering back to like my early 20s here. So yeah. But yeah, those were a lot of the things that came up for me. And certain things that came up were tied to an emotion, meaning they weren't as easy to let go of. You know, like, so for example, like some of them, you'll see them be like, oh, that makes no sense. That's not me. And just let go of it. But sometimes it might be tied to an emotion. So for example, like, well, no, I need to be serious because that's how you become successful. It might take a little bit more of a deep dive and help to have someone to explore it with, but at least now you know. At least now you're conscious of who you think you need to be and who you truly are.
How do you know, let's say we're doing that exercise, what's really me versus what I'm comfortable with right now that could be a growth edge? Does that make sense?
Say more.
Like, let's say I've identified, which I don't, as someone who, I'm just thinking about people I know. Like, I really, I'm more laid back, and I like to lay around a lot, and I'm not really the super productive type, and blah, blah. And is that who you really are? Or have you just not maybe pushed the growth edge of what it would look like to like kind of have some structure in your life, or like set a goal? Because I think what I know to be true is everybody has different rhythms.
Yes.
And this comes up a lot with me because I think we all know that my rhythm is fast.
Yes.
And people will say things kind of like imperatively. I'm like, well, not everyone's moves like me, right? Like, we are different paces.
Yes.
Right. And you're authentically you and I'm authentically me. And people have also kind of tried to shame me in the past about like my rhythm. And I'm like, but this is just how I flow. And when I've tried to go another rhythm, I don't feel like myself. Things don't work very well. But it was good for me to explore that, because I was like, is it just a growth edge of like, am I uncomfortable going at that other pace?
Right.
So that's what I'm asking. I think sometimes there are things we identify as that we believe to be like who we are. And sometimes we really do know that. And sometimes it's just what we're comfortable with.
Totally. Because
we haven't, and I'll say with the structure, for example, or setting an intention or a goal, because people are afraid that they won't reach it or whatever. So they just rather not. So like, I don't do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep, totally. Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with how you're relating to certain ideas. So for example, structure. That's a great one. So sometimes I know the me of the past, you would have said the word structure for me and immediately I would feel constricted. But that's because how I'm subconsciously defining and relating to structure, which takes a good amount of like self-examination to see. And on top of it, here's one of the practices that I like to do. And I'm going to loop back around to some of the other things. So for example, when people think of business, a lot of times people are like, business, work, right?
We're not like that.
At all. Right? But the only difference is the subconscious definition that we have of that same word. So what I always give people the exercise of, this is a great way to rewire your limiting beliefs very instantly. So take something like business and then ask yourself, what is your subconscious definition of the word business? And let's say someone's like work, and they're like, work, they don't like that feeling. And there's someone who's trying to be very playful and joyful in their life. Well, no wonder they're going to struggle with business if they're subconsciously defining it as work. So you find your subconscious definition, you acknowledge it, go, okay, now tune in, what is Source's definition of business? And immediately you'll get the higher frequency version of whatever that is. And for me, that's loving life. That's what business is for me. It's just loving life. That's my business. For other people, it's living life at their leading edge. For you, it might be whatever it is. What comes in for you? I'm curious. For
my subconscious definition of business?
Both. What's
creativity?
And is it the same with the Source definition?
Yeah, it's creativity. It's play. Yeah, it's always been like that. So I feel lucky in that way, because I started in entrepreneurship, right? So it was just always my hobbies. Right. My hobbies made me money.
Oh, so there you go. So you started off with the source definition of it.
Yeah.
And that's why you can relate to it in such a great way.
So I love it so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a really quick way to see if, if you're hearing words like structure or business or sales or whatever it might be, take a moment to check in what's your subconscious definition, and then check in what source's definition, and it'll immediately rewire your subconscious for you, because a higher vibration always wins, right? And so that's one thing that I recommend to people. And two, because you brought up the point of like, what if people, are just like, oh, well, I'm just a laid back person and this is how I am, but there's clearly a bit of like passiveness in them, you will know that you've touched on who you really are when it sparks you and lights you up. That's how you know you've touched it. It's like, if I'm like, you're an amazing person, it's like, thank you, right? That spark is the spark of truth. If I was like, I don't know, if you're genuinely I'm a laid back person, I'm very laid back, so if you were to say to me like, oh, you're very laid back, I'm like, yes, right.
Yeah.
But I still get a lot of done.
Yeah.
But if I was using my laid backness as unconscious defense mechanism of feeling certain things, you would have been like, oh, you're very laid back. I probably would have felt a little bit of a grumble inside that I could have chose to bypass and be like, yeah, I'm laid back and I'll go process what you just said later.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll feel a spark when it's true. You'll feel that light.
Yeah, I feel like what I notice is people will be like, yeah, and then they come back and like, that kind of hurt me, or like that kind of offended me, and I'm like, well, you agreed.
Right.
Yeah. So isn't that interesting how we will identify with things that we also know aren't even true?
Right. Yeah. And because it's almost a learned behavior to say yes and agree before you actually digest what's being said.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself like, oh, wait, hold on a second. I have something to say. That didn't feel good.
Yeah. Well, and I think that connects with what we were talking about earlier around how many people, their whole self-concept is everybody else is going to reflect back to me who I am.
Yeah.
Which is very different than like me knowing who I am. Yeah. And then if you tell me something, I'm going to tell you yes or no.
Right.
People tell me things about myself all the time. I'm like, no.
Right.
No, ma'am. No, sir.
No, ma'am.
Thank you for that. But I'm pretty sure I know, right? But a lot of people, they gather all of their information about who they are and their personality traits by what other people reflect.
Right.
And I think there are opportunities in that. There are certainly things. I had a really beautiful moment with some of my friends recently. We were giving reflections to each other, and they were saying things about me that I had never used that language to describe myself. And when they said it, I mean, we were all crying because it was so beautiful. I was like, you're right. I am like that. Like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm great, And so there's certainly value in that too, because sometimes people can put words to things or point things out that you don't even yet see in yourself. But then there's also the other side of people telling you like you're stubborn, or, telling you if you're an introvert or an extrovert. It's like, no, I think I know that. Yeah. Right. You don't always see. So I think it's just having that discernment, and to your point, like getting in your body about how you expand or contract, or how you feel lit up or not.
100%. I think one of the most underrated practices or devotions is the devotion to being your true frequency, which is a deep topic and could go many different directions. But it's something that I see all the time. Like, for example, when people will use the words like, oh, my family drained me, or my clients drained me. It's like, no, they didn't. That's not actually what's happening. That might be the experience, but it's your judgment or your resistance to your family that's draining you as a side of it. So it's happening in your own energy, and and you have that resistance because chances are you're afraid to be your true self in that scenario, because you have a belief that, oh, they can't handle it, or I'm going to get judged. So you lower yourself and then find yourself drained and think that it's them doing it. And this is just the beautiful reality of illusion. And so the devotion to being your true frequency is such an underrated quality, and it starts with being devoted to your truth. Like, can you be who you are, the same you, when you're with your family, then when you're with your clients, then when you're with your friends? Or do you shapeshift depending on who you're with? That will give you a sense of just where you're at with between you and you. And so yeah, it's a practice that I always recommend, because for me it's everything. Because if I'm emanating and being my true frequency, then everything that comes into my reality will have a texture of ease to it. It'll have a texture of enjoyment to it. There will be challenge. There will 1,000% be challenge that's going to bring up certain insecurities and limiting beliefs I had. But I'd much rather have challenges on a path that's my own than challenges on a path that's not. Right?
Do you think there are nuances to that, though? Because, I mean, I certainly agree with you. And I also think sometimes like with the shape-shifting, there's the shape-shifting of like, let me adjust myself so I seem to be more palatable, or whatever I think that is. But there's also I think different people can bring out different parts of our personality.
1,000%.
You know, like beautiful parts. Like I think each of my friendships, like I feel like I'm the same person, but there are some friends I'm like a lot goofier with, and that's like the main frequency of our relationship. And other friends, it's a lot more like philosophical. We just kind of are hitting different angles. And so in that way, I'm like, you know, there's these different parts that come out.
Totally. Yeah. Certain things might be more accentuated.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm with my black friends, I'm more black.
Yeah.
It was like that, because I know there's a certain lingo I could talk, and so for sure certain aspects of you will become more accentuated, but at least it's still authentic, as opposed to playing a role that you think will make you loved or accepted or fill in the blank over there. It's, you know, as if you're getting drained by it, there's your clue that something's off.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, so to go back to, I love it because our conversation, I think, kind of answered my original question I was going to ask. But going back to your manifesting the TV show from a relaxed frequency, we talk about manifesting from a relaxed frequency. And you were, you know, talking about how if I want to create something in a certain frequency, I have to start there, essentially. Do you think that you can manifest from a relaxed frequency if you haven't already been embodying your true authenticity?
To a degree. I would say to a degree, because, you know, at all times, whether you're happy, sad, cranky, mad, whatever it is, you have a core, unique, energetic signature. And that is always vibrating. That is always emanating. So even though you're like an onion, so there's layers to you. So you might be investing in a lot of fears and stress in your life. So you're manifesting synchronicities that plug into that. But your core frequency is always vibrating as well. So you'll always have opportunities show up in your reality that will serve who you really are. So you could still manifest things that complement your true frequency, even if you're not fully integrated and embodied in it. You might just not notice it. Or you might overlook it or tell yourself you're not ready or anything of those things. But it's always there. So it's not something you can lose or earn. It just is. And so of course it helps to become more conscious of it and to become more anchored in it, because it's kind of like choosing to put out one radio station or one song rather than 5 songs playing together. Like you have your fear song, your stress song, your happy song, your true song. You know, like I do my best to have just my one song, my core song playing as much as possible. And then, then it makes it easier to manifest from that place. I actually have a cool story on manifestation to share later.
Yeah.
Whenever. But I learned a cool,
like on air or off air?
I could share it here. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah. It was a cool download I got from Spirit around. So I was having a conversation with a friend and talking about soul-led business. And we were talking about how when you're living a soul-led business, or you're choosing to pursue a source-led or soul-led business, that is very different than believing that everything is happening by your hand and life happens by me. It is more of a dance of harmony and trust and surrender and all these things. So the conversation I was having with Spirit was like, okay, I know and I experience that you're taking care of everything. You know, I just need to show up, and you're giving me the inspirations, you're giving me the intuitions. I need to show up and act on them to the best of my ability, and you're putting the people on my path and the opportunities. But what determines the speed of our manifestations? If you're taking care of everything, what if I want to speed things up? How does that work? And the download I got right away was the determinants are 3 things: your level of courage, your level of boldness, and your level of audacity. And I was just like, damn.
The tracks.
The three tracks, the three gears of where you can choose to meet spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because courage might lead you to taking a baby step. You know, so you're like, okay, I really feel called to take this leap of faith or to share my gifts on stage in this way, but I'm afraid. So with my courage, I'm going to invite people into my living room and take a baby step toward this. That is still you meeting spirit and energizing certain synchronicities. But on the same token, you can ask yourself, all right, well, what would boldness do? Oh, boldness, I would probably just go straight into making the event and just go straight for it. Cool. Now you're meeting spirit over here and things will click in even faster. And then you might be like, okay, what would be audacious though? If I had the audacity, what would it be? Man, I would reach out to Christina the channel and ask her to be part of this thing because like, you know, I just love her audience and I love her and I would love to do it with her. And that feels like audacity to me. And that'll click in a new level of synchronicity.
Yeah.
So that was a download I got and I just thought it was so brilliant.
Yeah. I love that. And it connects because I feel like I haven't used that language around it, but when I talk about my own experience with like why I'm really good at manifesting, I'll say, I'm like, there's synchronicity in the alignment, but the piece that has worked in my life is like, I'm bold.
Yes.
Like I always make bold moves. And I think for me, the language I use more is like, that's where, you know, the action comes into play when you're manifesting. You got to take action and bold action. But I've known that to be true in my life. And you know, I'll encourage my friends this. I'm like, you just got to go for it. Like when it's in alignment and you go for it, I'm telling you, it always works out. Yes. And everything good that's happened in my life, it was because I was fucking bold, you know? So, I mean, I totally resonate with that.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that a lot of times in the more spiritual space, people somehow get out of the boldness a bit. It's like, it is more because it's about like, you know, we want ease and it's more relaxed, but those can go together.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's more fun. You know, like I love to be bold.
So much more fun.
And, you know, now that I got the download of the audacity, because it's not a word that I've played with much, now I'm constantly asking myself, I'm like, okay, what would the audacious thing be to do in this scenario? And it's giving me a way to like, to play, you know? And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun for me and the people who've been playing with it. Because it gives you a way of feeling in control, for lack of better words. It's like I just kind of see it's like you're driving on the highway. You could drive at 20, you could drive at 50, you could drive at 100. You know, courage, bold, audacity. So you'll still get there, but how quick do you want to go? If you want some control in the speed, that's how you could do it.
I love this because I'll explain like how when I read fields, right? I'm like, somebody can be vibrating really high, and so their energy field, their energetic signature will be clear and it will be, you know, pretty, it's there, it's good. But when people are bold and audacious, it is bright.
Interesting.
So it like turns up. If you think about on the color, it's like going from, let's say, just like a blue to like an electric blue. Yeah. It's like the lights are on, and that's how it affects like the field as I see it. And it's a very clear thing I see and I notice that with clients, people who do attract things in really quickly. It's like, oh, because you've brightened your field and you do that through bold action. So it's like that all tracks.
Totally. And it's such a good clarifier too, in the sense of if you're in a position where you're trying to make certain decisions and you're not sure what the best decision to make is, ask yourself, what would be the bold thing? Right? And guaranteed it's going to highlight something. Like if you were to be bold right now, what would be the move? Like, oh, it would definitely be this, but that scares me. Good.
Yeah.
But now you got clarity, you know, and so now you could choose to lean into it if you so choose, but at least you can't say that you don't know.
Yeah. Well, and also that's such a fun way to always find your edges and like expand.
Yeah.
Right. Because all those bold things are going to, like, am I going to do that? And it's like, you immediately found it. Yeah. And it's exciting. Yeah. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you like just break past that.
Exactly.
So you don't stay in that like comfort zone. Which tends to be uncomfortable anyway.
Which is kind of just the funny paradox, right? Yeah. Comfort is uncomfortable.
100%. I love this so much. Yeah. What's the most recent bold, audacious thing you've done? Where has it shown up recently?
That's a great question. Two things. So one was when I was in LA, you know, I was moving through some heartbreak from the end of a relationship, And I really wanted to see my friends, Oren and Chelsea, and one, just hang out with them because I love them. And two, I was like, I felt in me like, oh, I really would like to receive service from them. But the way I was initially approaching it was like, oh, let's hang out. And then I'll just bring up that I'd love some help over here. But something felt funny in my energy to approach it in that way when I knew that there was really a deeper desire as to why I was wanting to see them as well as just hanging out, but I wasn't speaking into it, or I almost didn't speak into it. And so when I asked myself, I'm like, well, what would be bold in this scenario? It was to ask them, because what I also felt in my body was I wanted to receive service, but my body just wanted to receive it without having to pay for it. I just wanted to receive from my family. And, and I have no problem paying for things, but it's like sometimes it's like you just want family support. And it could get a little tricky when all your friends are coaches and whatever.
Yeah.
And so it felt like an edge to be like, hey, I know that this is the work that you do in the world and this is how you're serving everybody. And I'm like, I would love to see you guys, and I would really just love to receive service from you, from my heart, because I'm going through something. If that's possible, that would be amazing. And it was a little nerve-wracking. And then the response I got in return was, it's so funny you said that, because we just receive a calling ourselves to be more of service to our community, and you were the first person who came in with that request. And so it synchronized perfectly, spirit to spirit. So that was one area where I acted on boldness.
Yeah.
And another one which felt more audacious of me was there's a certain person who I've been wanting to co-create with, but I've had certain fears and edges around it just because it feels, how do I describe this? Because it's stuff that someone else would have wanted to do with me, but I'm feeling called to do it over here.
I see, yeah.
And so I had to take a moment and be like, okay, for me, the audacious in this context feels like the word regardless. It's like regardless of my emotions, regardless of my fears, regardless of my insecurities, rather than working through all those things first, I'm not going to ignore them. I'm not going to bypass them, but I'm going to treat them like a pebble in my shoe and keep walking. And so just taking the actions, being like, hey, I really see this co-creative potential over here. Let's explore that. Mm-hmm. So that was like an area of audacity for me.
Yeah.
That felt, from the outside looking in might sound very simple, but to my body, it's like, no, that was a lot.
Mm-hmm. I love those examples, like for that reason, because I think without context, people think it has to be some big, dramatic, life-changing, everyone's watching kind of thing to be bold or audacious. But it's like this stuff comes up literally all day, every day.
Yes.
And especially in conversation. And it's all those little ways that we interact and communicate. And I think a lot of that kind of inner talk where we're upgrading constantly, and we have choices to follow our soul or our fear, right? And so it's like your whole experience of boldness can be very much just within your own personal process and how you're relating to yourself and conversations with friends.
100%. And and it removes stutters from your vibration. That's one of the things that I've observed is, we could have stutters when we talk, but from a vibrational perspective, most of us stutter in the sense of, you feel an inspiration, you feel a calling, but you don't flow towards it. So you start to stutter your vibration and create time. So this cuts through stutter and allows you to be more fluent in your vibrational talk.
Yeah. Oh, David Lyon with the bangers. Oh my God. Also, this is what I love. I'm like listening to you and I'm like, you're such a channel. Every single thing we've talked about today, we're going to re-talk about tonight. Yeah. Because I'm like, this is all related to like personal stuff. I'm like, it's in the field. 100%. So much amazing wisdom you've shared today. Thank you.
Of course.
Tell everyone where they can connect further with you. Because I'm sure people are going to want to keep up. I mean, we'll all be keeping our eyes open for whenever the show comes to fruition. I know that's like a longer process because there's more things going on, but yeah, how can people connect further? What's going on?
Best way is always Instagram. That's where I'm most active. It's at davidlyon.love. And you could just type my name in anywhere on Google and you'll find my YouTube and my website. So my website is www.livingmagic.life. YouTube David Lyon, but yeah, you could find all the things pretty easily.
Okay, we'll put all that in the show notes, and I'm saying it on air. We need to, in 2025, finally have our collaboration.
Yes.
Whatever it is. I want to do something in person.
Oh, yeah. No, we need to do an event together.
Yeah, we'll do an event.
Oh, yeah.
So everybody pressure us.
Bring it.
Yeah, bring it. Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.